Yes. Hey, welcome to Retro Game Club Podcast episode, whatever, backup episode because we are busy or forgot to record. I am Hugh, and joining me is someone I can only describe as a games master, Rob.
Man, I hope not this GamesMaster because, oof, yeah, you guys will hear all about it in a minute. But yeah, I mean, I'm already speechless. Already speechless. Yeah, this is something we recorded a while ago, and it's the future now. So I'm assuming I have at least like one robot arm, something.
Okay. All right. I might own an electric Subaru by now.
Okay. All right.
I was looking at them, the pricing on those, and the price is not terrible.
Well, also, everyone can assume that we are AI at this point. Like, this podcast is AI generated.
Yeah. I wonder what would happen if someone uploaded all of our episodes and somehow trained an AI to produce episodes that sound like us. They would be very disjointed and full of factual errors.
Bitter, yeah. It would, oh my gosh, we have to do that. I wonder if I could run these MP3s through like a voice to chat thing and then send that to chat GPT and then just say, make an episode.
Maybe, yeah. It could end up like the person that tried to do like an AI generated Seinfeld episode, and like a few episodes in, it just started saying racist stuff.
It always goes there, doesn't it? It just always happens.
Yeah.
So this is, I think, the last of our We Watched TV shows about video games series. And this one was pretty painful. It is GameMaster. It is from the UK, from Channel 4, from 1992 to 98. And I guess in 2021, it came back for a few more episodes. I'm going to have to watch that, but we'll see. So, have you ever heard of GameMaster before this?
No, I have not. So this was on, you probably mentioned already, BBC, British Television Channel 4.
Mm-hmm. For a long time, yep.
For a long time, okay.
126 episodes of this.
Yeah. They had a corporate sponsor the whole time, too, so it's not like this was just being funded because it was, funded through tax revenue or however they fund British television.
Mm-hmm.
Like, someone was paying for this.
Yeah.
Like, McDonald's said, this is how we want to represent our brand.
Yeah, so let me start this by saying, like, okay, the YouTube link is in our show notes, so go watch it. It starts out, the whole show is very dark. In my notes, I wrote that this show has less lighting than Doom 64.
Mm-hmm.
And the first line in the show is "Welcome to Hell," and it's while the host of the show is surrounded by Satanists. And at this point, I'm all in. I'm like, okay, this is the episode we're watching for sure. Yeah. And the whole Satanist thing and kids in cages type theme goes on through the whole episode.
Yeah.
I don't know if it goes on through the whole season or what, but this is season 4, episode 12. So
it's a bizarre, it was a very bizarre theme. In the US, you would get some sort of reaction from it.
Well, Satanic Panic, even in the 90s, right?
Yeah, even today. I mean,
yeah, even more so today, probably.
I think I agree. I think it would be received worse today than it would have been in the 90s.
Yeah.
I actually think we started to chill out on this a little bit in the 90s and have unfortunately reverted back.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyhow, it was a weird theme. I don't know what the format of this show is. It seems like it's game reviews. Like, we introduce a new game and then some kids from Hull play it. And then maybe we talk about a new product.
Yeah. And so there is a game master or games master, I guess. And is he what you expected him to be?
No, I mean, it's basically a floating head. I understand that the person's floating head belongs to a somewhat well-known astronomer in the UK. Maybe he'd been on some other shows and people knew who he was.
He looked like the villains from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Like he looked like a crusty old dude.
He did, yeah. Like for comparison, like imagine you had a show in the US where like Neil deGrasse Tyson's head was like floating and kind of incoherently talking about video games. And then you went and played a game with the most unenthused teenagers you could find. And then they reviewed the game, usually one word reviews, right? Not like it sucked, just sucked, right? Like,
yeah, yeah.
That's what I mean. They can't manage 2 words because they're so low energy.
Yeah.
And then you bring out some borderline celebrities to also play a game and review it.
And yeah, there's a little esports in there, and because they're playing against each other, and kids in jail are rooting for them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, do they get out of jail if one of them wins?
I don't know, because they lost, and then we'll get into that part in a second. But imagine being a producer for a TV show and saying, like, we're going to make this show called Game Master, just like, you know, all the other shows we did, the American and the Canadian ones. Like, most of the hosts were like in their teens, 20s. They were hip-ish for the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, no, let's scratch all that. Let's get some 40-year-olds to host the show. And then the Games Master, let's just find the oldest dude possible and just make him Max Headroom. Let's do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you know, call McDonald's and say, do you want to give us money to make this happen? And they're like, absolutely. I do. I do want that. But the first game was Bomberman 2. Which in what year was this? This must have been like 94 or something. But
it's 94 because 32X was a hot selling system.
That's right. Yeah. So wasn't like a Bomberman 37 out by then, or was it really just Bomberman 2?
Well, it depends on the console. What they were probably playing was Super Bomberman 2.
Mm-hmm. I think it was, yeah.
On the Super Nintendo. Again, I mentioned at the beginning, like, I don't know if this show had extremely low, like, quality production or if this is a bad rip. Because it's just, like, the video quality is so bad, I really had a hard time figuring out what they were playing.
Oh, you mean like the person who had the beta tape or taped it off TV and put this on YouTube? Yeah, it might have just been bad, yeah.
Yeah, and there were, I mean, if you count Japan, by 94, 1, 2, 3, 4... there were 5 mainline Bomberman games out, and many of them had ports, you know. So, yeah, Bomberman, another game called Bomberman that's not Bomberman. Bomberman 2 in 93, High 10 in 94 all would have been out.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe it's just because I was a TurboGrafx kid and they were all there.
Yeah. So you were very aware. Whereas if you were a Super Nintendo owner, you really weren't that aware of Bomberman yet.
But so they had, what, 2 or 3 kids play against a person dressed up as Bomberman, kind of.
Yeah.
And they all lost horribly. Like, these kids sucked at Bomberman.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think they understood what the point was.
But these kids looked like they were kind of the sports kind of playing, the Madden type video game players. They did not look like they were into Bomberman.
Sensible Soccer, because this is UK.
True, yes. There you go.
Which they do review Sensible Soccer in this episode.
Yeah. And like we said in our previous, if you listen to our previous episode for Bad Influence, the British TV show, these kids are lesser than those ones. They both same enthusiasm, but these kids were really angsty.
Yeah, these kids come across as though they had to appear on the show as some kind of like punishment. Like they got caught committing some kind of petty vandalism, and the punishment is they have to do community service via being on this TV show.
I came to a similar conclusion. I thought they were orphans, and it was as if parents were trying to bring them home and they did not want to go to that home. So they were just saying the worst things possible for the parents to be like, never mind, we don't want this kid.
Yeah, okay.
That's what it seemed like to me. They just didn't want anyone to like them. But They got crushed at Bomberman 2, and when they were asked to review it, one kid said boring. The other kid, like you said sucks.
Yep. It doesn't even, not 2 words, just one. That kid cannot manage a whole second word.
And then they got back into more devil worshipping, and I'm not talking about the kids, I'm talking about the adults.
Yeah.
I had that in my notes there too. And then, yeah, that's when they got into the 32X, which my ears kind of perked up again.
Yeah. Yeah, and they mentioned that the 32X was outselling the Jaguar and 3DO combined. And I can confirm that that was the case. When the 32X was new, it was a really hot system for a short amount of time.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it really flew off the shelves. And, it burned brightly, but shortly, if that's the right way of putting it.
It just needed, if it just had the one killer app on it. You know what I mean? It just needed to have one awesome game.
Well, it needed to have a real Sonic the Hedgehog game.
Yeah, I mean, I can see TurboGrafx, is my all-time favorite system, but 32X I love, and I kind of think of them the same way, other than they both have adapters. Well, the 32X is an adapter, but that in terms of their library, I think they have the most pretty good games in terms of ratio of bad games, good games. The most pretty good games compared to like SNES and Genesis, where SNES and Genesis have like the best games, but these two systems have more pretty good games. And so you're kind of stuck with that.
Yeah, I've said it a million times, but the 32X had really good arcade ports.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big deal for why it was successful. It had
NBA Jam.
NBA Jam had a passable version of Doom compared to other consoles at the time.
Space Harrier.
Yep. Yeah.
Mortal Kombat.
But it didn't have any RPGs, and it didn't really have a Sonic game. It had Knuckles Chaotix, which is that weird, like, tethered game.
Mm-hmm.
If in the launch library it had Sonic the Hedgehog 4, it would have had a better lifespan.
Oof, that's a bad one though. That's a bad game.
No, not Sonic. If it had a game called Sonic the Hedgehog 4.
Oh, okay. Not that Sonic.
Not the Sonic the Hedgehog 4. They just released Sonic the Hedgehog 4, as a launch title for the 32X, or a few months in.
Yeah.
Completely different story.
Yeah, I mean, it's so unfortunate. Yeah, but anyway, they talked about a game called Man Enough for the 32X.
Is there what time? Do you have a timestamp for that?
No, but here, let me Google Man Enough 32X, which I'm kind of afraid to Google that.
Well, put Sega in the word too. That'll help.
No.
There's a PC game called Man Enough from 1994.
Oh, maybe they were talking. Maybe that's when they were transitioning.
They're transitioning this thing about bad dating games, and this looks like the bad dating game they were talking about.
Okay, yeah. Have you ever heard of this game?
No, but there were actually games like this on like PC Engine in Japan and of course, PCFX, where it's like, here's a picture of a woman, and you have to make choices. Like, I'm reading, like, I can't read some of these. I'm sorry. So it's just like she asks you a question, and then you must like answer. But here's like, okay, so you're meeting this one woman, and you have like a list of pickup lines. It looks like. So you have option 1. I just don't want this to take out of context. As pretty as you are, guys must give you a lot of sales pitches. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 2, consider this a cold call, but don't worry, my hands are warm.
Oh, wow. Okay.
3, since it's so easy for you to talk to me, you must be in sales.
Okay.
Those are the 3 options when you meet her.
I think I would go for, I mean, none of them are good, but I got to go for the first one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with she seems to be minding her own business. Just leave it that way. I got to see that. I'm going to have to watch a walkthrough of this game or something. I I don't know if you want it in your browser history.
Yeah, that might be an incognito mode thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of like, here's a woman at the gym and I'm just going to start talking to her, which again, probably they don't appreciate so much. I mean, I've been married for a long time, so I don't really, I don't know much about pickup lines, but oh, geez, some of these get pretty.
Well,
life.
The best part is that this was on a show for teenagers about video games and devil worship.
Yeah. This looks like. I'm sorry, I'm still fascinated with this game. It's
So what 32X games did they talk about then? Because I didn't write any of them down.
I didn't. They didn't really talk about it at great length. I didn't think.
I did have a note here that the Bomberman competition was more fun than it should have been. You know what I mean? Like when the kids talked, it sucked. But when everyone was quiet and it was just watching people play Bomberman, I was actually kind of into that. But I think I like Bomberman more than most people.
Yeah, I used to like it a lot. I don't really play it much anymore.
But
I got into it for a while. I went through a period where I was playing it a bunch, and I don't play it quite as much anymore.
The next segment, I definitely need you to lead off with, because I'm sure you'll do a much better job than I would have.
Oh, is this the pro wrestling segment?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So at one point they bring out pro wrestlers, and I wasn't really listening. I recognized the pro wrestlers right away. Forgot that these two were a tag team. So it was Marcus Alexander Bagwell, who later wrestled under the name Buff Bagwell, and another wrestler named the Patriot, who were a tag team in WCW, World Championship Wrestling, between 1994 and 1995. It was a very short-lived pairing. The Patriot was a gimmick that started, around the time of the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, obviously. His finishing move was called the Patriot Missile, just to give you an idea. And he was a guy that wrestled in like USA flag tights and a USA flag mask, right? And he kind of came up through a promotion called Global Wrestling Federation, GWF. Got signed for WWF for a while, but didn't really work out there. So we went to WCW, where they paired him off with Marcus Alexander Bagwell, another GWF guy, actually. And he'd been kind of floundering around like the tag team scene for a while. Like they tried him out with a few different partners, and none of them really worked. And this time around, they paired him up with the Patriot, and I think they won the tag team title for a few months. But by 95, the Patriot would have been out of WCW. And Marcus Alexander Bagwell later pivoted his gimmick to, I'm a guy named Buff Bagwell. He certainly appears to have done some steroids because he was already a pretty big dude, but around 96, he was a really big dude. He was recently featured on, you've probably maybe heard the wrestler Diamond Dallas Page. He does like rehab for pro wrestlers now.
No.
He runs a clean house. Well, okay, he's a former pro wrestler from WCW, and he runs a clean house for pro wrestlers that need detox and clean living. It's like a clean living house for old wrestlers. He does. And Buff Bagwell just was through there. He looks like hell, but he's in better shape than the Patriot, who is dead. So there's this thing I mentioned. I posted some catalog scans, at the beginning of the year. And one of them was like a cover for a pro wrestling game. And I said, it's always depressing when you look at the covers of pro wrestling games. Because any pro wrestling media that you look at that's more than 20 years old, half the people in it are dead.
And yeah, is it just the hard lifestyle? Is it I want to say drugs, but it's mostly.
Yeah, so these guys don't have a season. Like pro wrestling runs 365 days a year. And they work through a lot of injuries. They're technically independent contractors. Like there's technically drug testing, but it's not really very good. And it's a lot of drugs and a lot of just chronic injuries, Yeah. So a lot of them die fairly young from, steroid or drug related problems.
From what I've read, like the WWF and all that don't really take care of their employees that much unless like you're the top of the top.
Right. They'll just, if you have a drug problem, they're more likely to fire you and just be done with it. Unless you're, like you said, an elite wrestler. And And there are some guys like like The Rock, comes from a family of wrestlers, and those guys just are like genetically built to be pro wrestlers. Like,
yeah.
Like those guys, some of them have died young, but most of them, like, I mean, the guys that were like wrestling as the Wild Samoans in like the 70s and 80s, like those guys are still alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the guys from like the Deep South that are just nuts.
And that's these guys. These are. But anyhow, that 50% estimate holds up here. So there's two guys that were a tag team in '94. One's dead. The other has, he's trying to get his life together. I guess I shouldn't criticize him, but I mean, he looks like someone that's been through rehab and has had some really rough years.
Mm-hmm.
So let's kind of hope he can. You've always got a chance to get better. Like, so let's just hope he gets.
He did make a pretty funny flub. Whoever was doing their intro and talking about patriotism and what it means to him, instead of saying, it includes America and every place else, when he listed like all what he thought was his definition of patriotism, he said excludes instead of includes. So he pretty much ripped on America at that point. Well, yes. On accident.
Was that the guy in the mask that said that, or the guy without the mask?
I forget. It's the guy that just went on and on about patriotism right when they walked in.
Probably the Patriot. Yeah, that was his gimmick. Yeah, he would go on these longs. He was not a particularly good promo guy. This might be why he didn't last in WWF, because he would kind of go on, and I'm just thinking like how differently those promos would be taken today.
Yeah.
Like
it'd be today, political today.
It would be way too. It would be viewed as a political thing today. You couldn't do that gimmick again, really.
And that's strange that it would, because you're saying the exact same words for the exact same countries, but cut 20, 30 years and it's just taken so differently.
It is, yeah. So it's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
But also, as I noted, if WCW was touring Europe at the time, and they wanted to send a tag team to this show, why did they pick the team covered in American flags?
I know. Literally.
Like, they had other teams at the time.
So when I was choosing the episodes for this, I was kind of fast forwarding through episodes on YouTube, just seeing, what games, what different, segments it had. And when I landed on this, it was on mute at the time. So I assumed it was going to be some UK guys doing a parody on America. And then when I unmuted, I was like, whoa, wait, these are American accents. What's happening here? So it made even less sense when I actually heard what they were saying.
Yeah, and I'm looking like other guys they had on the WCW roster at the time. I mean, they had Steve Austin was on the WCW roster back then.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've heard of Steve Austin.
Which is probably why he wouldn't go on a kids show in the UK.
Oh, this was not Steve Austin. Steve Austin in WCW is not the same gimmick as the Steve Austin you're thinking of.
I just meant he may have been too popular.
No, he was kind of a mid-carder in WCW. That's why he left to go to WWF, because he was stuck. It's like I'm watching like the nearest pay-per-view to this show.
Mm-hmm.
Like Steve Austin is right in the middle of it, and he's wrestling Jim Duggan, who's a career mid-carder.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've met him.
Event, you've met him, really?
Yeah, Comic-Con. He's there every year at Motor City Comic-Con.
Oh, it's true. Okay.
He's still alive.
I can't believe he's alive. Yeah. He's had like kidney transplants and stuff. Like, I don't know how that dude is alive. And then you look at the main event, and it's like kind of the old timers. It's Dusty Rhodes, his son, Dustin Rhodes, and the Nasty Boys were in the main event.
I remember them.
Yeah. Against Terry Funk, Arn Anderson, Bunkhouse Buck. I know you don't know who that is.
Mm-hmm.
And Colonel Robert Parker, who wasn't even a wrestler. Right. These are the guys that were getting ahead of Steve Austin in the pay-per-view card, which is why he was upset.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just looking at like the other tag team options they had at the time. That it was kind of a weak tag team division back then.
So anyway, they get these wrestlers to go on this show for, I still don't know why they had them on the show, but what did they have them do?
They played fighting games.
They played Fatal Fury Special.
Yeah.
Against each other. Not against a kid or anything like that. Against each other. So you're watching two guys that it was obvious it was the first time any of them have held a controller and played Fatal Fury Special, which is not an easy fighting game to do any of the combos or anything.
Yeah, but they're on even ground at least, right? Neither of these guys know how to play it.
Yeah, but for any kid though, you're just watching this and it's just painful. Just, oh my God, get these guys out of here. And then they let the kids ask the GamesMaster some questions. And that felt fake, right?
Yeah, that was fake.
The kids did not write these questions at all.
Right, because the GamesMaster stuff is recorded separately. This isn't live.
Yeah, and it was like, what was the one? I think it was for Bubsy where they asked like, is there any way to make it even more weird? Or Bubsy's already a weird game. Is there any way to make it even weirder? And he was like, funny you should ask. You could put in this combo and it makes the ground bouncy. No kid would ever ask a question worded that way. Ever.
No, of course not.
And then they brought up some more computer games because I think they talked about like new 3D graphics. And
and you had never heard of Creature Shock. I was kind of surprised about
that. What's the deal with Creature Shock?
Yeah, I mean, I remember from the box art, it had a very menacing box. I was working in a game store, but I think it was a game that pretty much like it was like a game that you had to have like the latest greatest video card to play at the time. On DOS. Now they had other versions. They made a version for 3DO. They made it for PlayStation, Saturn, and I think there's a CDI version, although that can't possibly be good. Right. The 3DO version is probably okay. The Saturn version, who knows? It could be. I have no idea what the Saturn version is, if it's going to be good or not. This would be a good game club pick, though. I mean, it was really, it came across as like a sort of tech demo game. It has a lot of FMV. It was on, I think the PC version might have been multiple discs. Like one disc that like installs the game and the other one you actually play it off.
Okay.
And it's like, yeah, it's kind of like a first-person shooter with a ton of FMV.
Okay.
It's technically a very like strong game. I mean, the home versions obviously are going to be a little bit stripped down. The PlayStation one is probably, I'm going to guess, be the best. People, ports to Saturn or PC ports to Saturn are usually really, really bad. I mean, Saturn has like an absolutely atrociously bad version of Doom, for example. It's Quake on Saturn is kind of like, what? How did this happen? Like there's a lot of just like this. It shouldn't be this bad kind of games on Saturn. So I'd be willing to try the PlayStation version of this.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. I'm down.
Yeah. I don't know if I would go through the effort of trying to get the PC version going. It probably plays fine in DOSBox or something, but I guess something that was like heavy hardware requirements for 1994 is not heavy hardware requirements today.
So that was pretty much that show, right? That episode.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so we've watched this show, GamesMaster. We've watched Bad Influence, Throut and Neck, Starcade, Video Power, and Video and Arcade Top 10, that Canadian show. Yeah. So that's a lot of video game shows. What are your thoughts on all these? Is there an order you want to put them into? Is there what's your takeaway from all this?
Well, I don't have all the titles memorized. I mean, I mentioned before, Starcade is always my sentimental favorite. I really liked Bad Influence. I think that was actually a legit, well-produced show.
Me too.
I could see myself going back and watching the rest of those. GamesMaster is maybe last on the list for me right now.
Yeah, at least Throut and Neck was like a fever dream that was interesting.
It's at least entertaining. Yeah, there's really no part of this other than remembering the short-lived Stars and Stripes tag team that I liked about this show. It was really confusing, but not in a good way.
Video and Arcade Top 10 was fun, but it was a commercial. It was a Nintendo 64 commercial.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's all right. I mean, sometimes, infomercials can be good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Video Power, it didn't know what it wanted to be, I guess.
That's where the kids like go down the tube or something and Velcro games to their head, or is that the other one?
I definitely like that part. Like if they could combine Starcade with the ending of Video Power and then maybe the news from Bad Influence, that would be the show. That would be it.
Yeah, I still think you could do a modern Starcade reboot. But
Yeah.
you'd have to get people who weren't. You have to matching up skill levels is the hard part. You know, I think that's the problem when you watch old Starcade is there's often a huge skill gap. Like one of the episodes that I was thinking of recommending, but I didn't, like one of the teams were like a father-daughter, and they owned a convenience store that had like 3 or 4 arcade games in the front.
Mm-hmm.
So the father, apparently after the store closed, would just play like video games a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So when those games came up in Starcade, he would pick those and just completely annihilate everybody else because he'd been playing them after work a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think with, Twitch and YouTube, and I mean, this is 15-year-old now, but, but barcades being popular, they've been popular for like 10, 15 years now. The fact that all of those things exist in abundance, there's no reason why one of those barcades couldn't create a Twitch game show weekly or monthly at their barcade that was like Starcade. They could absolutely do that.
Yeah,
that would be
like
awesome.
Trivia Night.
Yeah, yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
So there's no way anyone's going to steal that idea because there's no way any listener made it this far into this episode.
They can steal the idea. I'm never going to do it. Opening up arcade is like, even if I won the lottery, I wouldn't do that.
No, neither would I. It just means you're fixing stuff and dealing with the public. That's all it means.
Well, you're dealing with the public who have been consuming alcohol.
Yeah. So, yeah. Any other thoughts? Are there any? Can you think of any TV shows we've missed?
I can't, but one may come to mind. I'm going to have to go back and look at Wikipedia and see if there's any shows other than, not counting like Saturday morning cartoons that were based on video games.
Yeah, there's from what's the Twitch channel I watch? That old-timey computer, something like that. Yeah, it's called something like that. They show some Russian shows which are horrible, or they're from that area, the Eastern Bloc. And then there's got to be some Japanese ones, right? There've got to be.
Yeah, there's the thing that Retro Game Challenge is based on.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So if there was a dubbed version or something, I would be interested in that.
Well, YouTube has that could do live translation now. It might not be that great, but
yeah.
So yeah, there's a chance we may have another episode like this recorded sometime, but I think this last one was the most painful of all of them.
Yeah, I think this has discouraged me from exploring the subject much deeper.
I am going to look at the 2021 Bad Influence show just to see how it changed.
Yeah, I am not.
Well, hopefully after this we have a real episode, a non-TV episode where we play games and stuff.
Yes, I hope so.
So yeah, does that wrap it up?
Yeah. So thanks for listening. And if you watch the show, thanks for suffering through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're from that part of the globe, please let us know if you have memories of it.
Yes.